everyone, and this is BioPhoenix here, and today we're going to be talking about more games that I would like to see get fan translated, part 2. So I'm not going to re-explain everything here, but yes, of course, I don't expect these fan translations to happen overnight because obviously these things take a lot of time. And a lot of my suggestions are games that are very obscure even for Japanese standards, so they probably don't have a lot of big demand for them, though I'm sure some of them are bigger than others. But without further ado, let's talk about more games. So the first one I want to talk about is on the Dreamcast, and it's a rather funny one, and that happens to be Sega Ga 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 Ga. Not even joking, that's the legit title. But as funny as the game title is, it's actually pretty accurate because this game is also pretty damn ridiculous. So pretty much you're a kid who gets recruited to join Sega and you gotta take over the gaming market because all the rival companies are evil. Yeah, I told you it was silly. And it happens to be an RPG where you gotta get Sega characters who join forces with you. And there is a lot of dumb humor within this game as far as I've seen. So knowing this, it's one of those RPGs that's like a parody of itself, and I'm always down for that. And I'm a little surprised that there hasn't been one yet, given that this game is pretty much a Sega fan service game, but I take it it's probably because of the fact that the game has a lot of text, but either way, I definitely can't wait to play this one whenever there is one released. So the next one I want to mention is a PS1 game called Germs. Yeah, this one is just really fucking bizarre. In fact, I actually did stream a little bit of it one time, and yeah, unfortunately I couldn't really get really far because I had no idea what the hell I was doing, but I gotta say though, from what little I've seen, it was very intriguingly weird. And not only that, but this is one of the early examples of an open world game. And this game does have a little bit of a horror vibe to it going on because there is a lot of like germ monsters that are infesting the town and you have no idea whenever they're gonna pop up. So in a strange way, it's kinda like Deadly Premonition where it has the whole mixture of horror and open world. And also just like Deadly Premonition, it's really fucking weird. And the next one I want to talk about is on the PC Engine CD, and that happens to be Bastard. So from what little I did play of this one, it sorta reminds me of Sword of Vermilion on the Genesis. And from what I experienced with it, I personally think it's a lot better. And as per usual of the PC Engine CD, I really love the way it looks, I love the OST, it's all really good stuff, but other than that, I really don't know what else to say since I really don't know much about the story other than that you're playing as like two chicks. But it does seem like a pretty fun one. So next up we have one of a really weird ass name, and that happens to be Uyami Dori Tenkentai, or some shit like that. I fucked it up probably, but it's the one with the really bitchin' cover. So yes, this is a horror game that's in 2D sprites, and it looks really cool looking. It has a very unique look to it, and it sort of reminds me of Twilight Syndrome. In fact, some of the people that worked on Twilight Syndrome actually helped out with this game, so that's probably why it reminds me of it so much, and why it looks so interesting to me. And as you would expect, there are some parts in this game that are pretty damn creepy looking, like this picture right here. But yeah, I don't know a whole lot about the story other than that it's about a bunch of kids trying to discover an urban legend in their neighborhood, so kinda like It, but only that there's no clowns in this game, or at least as far as I know anyways. Now this next one I want to mention does have a translation in the works, but I figured I'd mention it because it is a game that I always thought looked really cool, and that happens to be Zil Oil. Yeah, I don't know how the hell it's said. But if anyone is familiar with the PS3 game Trinity Souls of Zil Oil, then yes, this is actually related to that. So there's three versions of this game. There's the original on PlayStation, and then there's Infinite on PS2, and then there's Infinite Plus on PlayStation Portable. And I would be perfectly happy with any version of this being translated. But I forget exactly which version of the game is getting translated right now, but like I said, either one of them, I'm perfectly okay with it. But before I move on, I should mention that these games are actually more like turn-based RPGs, where Trinity of Souls is more like an action RPG. And it's always been something I've been curious about for a long while. And next up we have is a PC-98 game, and no, it's not a hentai, and that happens to be Tokyo Twilight Busters. But I should also mention that there is a DS version, which is kinda like an enhanced remake of sorts. And I'd be perfectly okay with any of them getting fan translated, but of course the PC-98 one, I just prefer the way it looks because I always loved that graphical style. So yeah, this game has a lot of different genres involved. It's like part point and click, part survival horror, and part RPG. And I even heard that there's even a little bit of strategy moments in here, so I'm really curious to see how that all works out. But yeah, of course, the horror and RPG part is really what stands out to me. But yeah, don't know what else to say other than that out of all the PC98 games that have not been translated yet, I think this is definitely one that I'm most interested in. And next up we have is a Sega Saturn game called Cyberdoll. So this is a turn-based RPG with a cyberpunk setting, always fucking awesome. And it also has a badass heavy metal soundtrack, which is even more awesome. And thankfully, one good thing I can say is that the battle system in this game is actually really easy to manage through, but everything else, unfortunately, is not. So because of that, this one is pretty hard to play, even if the battles are easy to understand. But one day I do hope it will eventually happen because this game just looks really fucking badass. And next up we have is Septentrion, Out of the Blue. So for those that don't know, this is actually a sequel to a game that actually did come out to North America, but the North American game was called SOS on the Super Nintendo. But in Japan it has always been known as Septentrion. So this is an adventure game where you're on a ship and the ship is sinking and you gotta survive. So if you think about it, yes, it's technically the Titanic Simulator. But I'm unsure what the story in this one is. Like, I don't know if this, like, directly connects to the Super Nintendo game, or if it's, like, its own thing, but still has the same concept, but either way, it's a pretty interesting game. And from what little I've played of the SNES one, I did really like it, so I definitely would be interested in trying out this one day. And now, with 2 more left. So, with this next one I want to mention is kind of a weird one, and that happens to be Phase Paradox on PS2. So let me get the strangest part of this game out of the way first, is that this game is actually a sequel, and the first game actually came out over here on PS1, but here's the weird kicker. So if you're unfamiliar with this game, then you can take as many guesses as you want to figure out what the first game was, but it's really unexpected. So the first game happened to be a shoot 'em up called Philosoma. Yeah, how you go from a shoot 'em up to a survival horror, like, that has to be the most, like, drastic change to a series I've ever seen. Even though it's only 2 games, but still, it's pretty fucked up. So yeah, it's a survival horror that takes place in space, and the only thing I do know about it other than the weird origin of it is that this game actually does have English voice acting in it, and it's pretty damn hilarious. But sadly, even though this game has English voice acting, it's still a bitch to play. There's another game that also has the same sort of scenario, but I'll probably talk about that one in part 3. So now, onto the final one I want to mention here, that happens to be Tengai Makio, Far East of Eden, The Fourth Apocalypse. So first thing I have to mention is that the cover art for this game is pretty badass looking, no matter which one you're looking at here. So you got one that kind of looks like a Shin Megami Tensei game, or even a Castlevania game, and then you got another one that's just like America as fuck. But unfortunately, that picture is only used for the cover art of the manual, but it's still pretty dope looking. So yes, this is a turn-based RPG series, and this is the 4th game within it, and the reason why I'm just mentioning the 4th one specifically has to do with the fact that this is the one that I'm more familiar with. Because one of my good friends on YouTube, Bossenberg, did a review on this game, and it looked great. So if you want a more, like, in-depth review about the game, if you want to know more about it, I can definitely recommend checking out that video. But yeah, this game has some really great 2D graphics and might just be one of my favorite looking on the system, which is definitely saying something. And one of the most interesting parts about it would have to be the battle system, where that it's done in first person, but all the monsters just look really huge and they all have some really cool animation going on. Now this is how you make a first person battle system that's turn-based exciting. Because as much as I do like first-person dungeon crawlers, I always found that the battle system in a lot of those games, there's a lot of, like, lack of animation, or just, you know, it's just not as exciting, but this one definitely looks really fucking cool. Now, I'm not 100% sure on any of the other games in this series having a fan translation, but of course, I'd be perfectly okay with it too. And that'll take care of part 2, so yes, that's all I have to say for suggestions of ones that I think would be really cool to see get translated in the future. But before I end it, I actually have to mention one thing about part 1, is that one of the games that I mentioned in it actually became true recently, and that happens to be The Stories of Ihatovo on SNES. Yeah, even with the English translated title, I still can't say it right. But yes, I was very ecstatic to hear that this game actually got finished. And I'm going to be playing it real soon, and I will let you all know that I am planning on doing a review on it. It'll probably be uploaded like a few months from now or something, but either way, I'm just letting you know that that is something that will be in the works, so stay tuned for that if you're curious about it. But with that being said, what are some fan-translated games that you would like to see in the future? Ones that were maybe not mentioned in this one, or ones that I didn't mention in the first part? Either way, I'd be open to hear more of them. And with that, thanks for watching and commenting, and have yourselves a great day.